Welcome to hello and welcome to another edition of Animaniaugust, the daily Animaniacs review show. Today we'll be looking at the third week of the show being on the air, and this is where we'll see the introduction of several Animaniacs staples and a whole lot of other stuff. So stay tuned and have fun. The first gag of the show is the Animaniacs saying the words "old or Beatty," which while wearing uh pajamas and with cups of tea. Like classy people. The first exit the tower gag of week 3 is about the waters getting out of the tower via the magic of bubblegum. They fly out of the tower via bubblegum, and that's how we start off the third week of this show. No pain, no painting. This episode about Animaniacs is about Pablo Picasso, who has pee-pee on his schmuck. Which he does, technically. Uh, well, Pablo Picasso paints normal paintings until the Animaniacs come and develop his own abstract art style. This segment is pretty funny, and it is definitely one of those historical segments that definitely does that is definitely funny. Like, I really do like all these historical segments of Animaniacs, and they all account for some of my favorites of the show. This is no exception. It isn't my particular favorite, but it is very, very great. It is funny, and it just seeing Animaniacs and just the gags. There's just a number of gags they made to squeeze in. It's just cool. I like it. Les Miserables. This is a parody of Les Miserables starring Rita and Runt. And honestly, uh, the idea is that they need to be safe by being turned into pastries. And it, of course, takes place in a bakery. Honestly, I don't really remember too much of this one. And honestly, I just never really had time for a rewatch. Honestly, it's just another one of those Rita and Run segments, and honestly, they're fine, I guess. The escalator chase return gag. This is the chase gag at the end of this episode. And this time they are in an escalator returning to the water tower. Well, we hit another new Animaniacs episode. And this time it starts with another opening thing. And that is Citizen Katie. And Yakko's holding up a slug that says Rosebud. Which is quite a spoiler. And not the only spoiler I'm going to tell in this video. Because Luke Skywalker is Darth Vader's dad. This episode begins proper with Yakko, Wacko, and Dot sledding down the exploded tower with popcorn like a ski slope. It's a pretty creative opening sequence, but it's still an opening sequence, so let's move on. Next up, we got Garage Sale of the Century. This is a very funny segment of Animaniacs. The Animaniacs attend the world's biggest garage sale. Garage sale run by a rather scammy grizzly bear who sells them broken stuff for extremely high prices. The Animaniacs come over and they ask for 25 cents for his garage, thinking it's a literal garage sale. But he says no. Of course, shenanigans ensue. And eventually, the Waters would get the best of him. And eventually, they would end up purchasing the garage for only 26 cents from him. Putting it on top of the garage on top of the tower, saying, well, we finally got a garage. This one is very funny. It'll make you laugh crazy. And so we get to another traditional segment. This time it takes place at a Chinese restaurant, and it involves the Waters getting fortune cookies. One of the fortune cookies is, of course, about regarding the next cartoon. West Side Pigeons. The Goodfellas take on a parody of West Side Story. And I gotta say that this is probably one of the most clever gags that I ever said. Because The Goodfellas are defending the Sparrows against literally a statue of Martin Scorsese. Literally. That's literally the whole plot. It's just so stupid and so mad. I like it. Hello, nice Warners. In this episode, the Warners decide to torture a Jerry Lewis stand who is directing a film. And their ideas of what's considered funny clash. There's definitely a lot of funny moments in this one. And there's definitely a lot of Ralph the Guard in this one too. Honestly, I definitely do really like this one. It is definitely pretty funny. I definitely would recommend it. La Behemoth. We first get our first segment with the Hip Hippos, and honestly, this is probably the weakest. They're probably the weakest characters. They're basically an old married couple, and the main gag is that they're fat. It just, fat jokes are already just generic in cartoons, but to see some show like Animaniacs use them is just, fat jokes are just cheap, and the Hip Hippos don't do much to stand out for the crowd, unlike many other parodies or other segments of Animaniacs. And honestly, yeah, the maid quits, and this one just the plot is just the maid quits, and they have to take care of their own mansion. Honestly, yeah, the Hip Hippos. I don't think anybody missed them when the reboot came around. Little Old Slavy from Pasadena. This one is a parody of the old rock song, The Little Lady from Pasadena. As she races across California to get a letter. The thing is that this episode is definitely noteworthy because Sloppy lives in Pasadena, but in other shorts, she lives in Burbank. This is granted because the song is about Pasadena, while the Warners live in Burbank, so it definitely does make sense about the inconsistency. In episode 14, we get our first introduction to the Mime Time segment, and, well, this segment is notable for being narrated by a guy who goes by the name Tom Bodett, who is most well known for narrating radio commercials for Motel 6. He also, of course, narrated the Good Idea, Bad Idea sorts that would come in later. But for now, let's talk about Mime Time. The first one is the mime is trapped in an imaginary box, but then a safe drops on them. Honestly, these segments are pretty basic, but, they're nice little segments of filler. La La Law. In a parody of LA Law, the Warners decide to go to court as they represent Dr. Statistif in a false parking ticket validation. The trial, of course, doesn't go as planned. And there's definitely a lot of funny gags. Like the Warners misinterpreting the terms subpoena and penal code to Yakko getting a literal badger so he can prove that he did not badger the witness. But then he gets a goat for goading the witness, which is a pun on gutting the witness. And they almost tell him in contempt of court. But then, of course, it just ends with them all tangoing. It's really hilarious. And there's definitely a lot of gags here. A lot of, like, in the parody intro, you have Yakko Warner kissing Grace Van Owen, Susan D. Dot Warner kissing Victor Stefanski, Jimmy Smits, and Uh, and Elmira Duff makes a cameo in Jury, and along with the mime also appearing in the segment. It honestly, it's pretty funny. It's a great parody of court segments and the idea of a court plot, and even just even if you never watched LA Law like I haven't, it's still very hilarious. We get to another mime time segment. The mime throws an imaginary football and gets tackled by a real football team. Cat on a hot steel beam. Honestly, this is probably the most well known of the Buns and Mindy segments. This is the one that was represented in the intro, and it was a parody of a cat on a hot tin roof. And it's definitely funny because there's a lot of cameos. The character Pussyfoot appears as a cat that Mindy chases, rather than solely just Mindy. Rather than solely just Buttons, where Buttons just so he keeps out of danger. And there's also parodies of Popeye, Tom and Jerry, of course, before Warner's acquired the Turner catalog, so they were completely different. And also a bunch of cameos. Honestly, they're just very, just, it's definitely funny just for the cameos, even if Buns and Minnie just aren't exactly the best characters. So, yeah. Then we get to the final mime time segment of this episode. The mime pulls an imaginary rope, and the mime gets squashed by a sandbag. And now we get to the final episode of this specific Animaniaugust. And this is a space scene episode, and fittingly begins with the title gag of Andromeda Strady. The tower gag begins with the Warners loading themselves in a cannon. First up is Space Probe, starring the Warners. Space Probe is a segment that that is the first space segment. There's definitely a lot of funny moments, like when Yago wishes for a scaly glad elders, or just the amount of cameos in this episode, or just there's just a lot of gags here, and really, personally do like this one. Battle for the Planet. Pinky and Brain now try to take over the whole universe. This one is another Pinky the Brain segment, and this is a sort of parody of War of the Worlds, more specifically Orson Welles' radio drama of it. Pinky the Brain decided to televise the War of the Worlds drama, but the result is definitely a failure. It definitely is unique in the Pinky the Brain lexicon, and that's why I like this segment.